Welcome to the Cody Felger Podcast, a podcast dedicated to talking Colts football. Here is your host, Cody Felger.
Welcome back to the Cody Felger Podcast. I'm your host, Cody Felger, and today we have a very cool interview. On with us now, Pete Sampson of The Athletic. Pete, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We appreciate you coming on. So, Pete, starting right in, you've been covering Notre Dame now for 18 years. You've seen a lot of prospects. The Colts took one of those prospects last year in the draft by selecting guard Quenton Nelson, number 6 overall. My question for you, Pete, is out of all the offensive line prospects that have come out of Notre Dame in the last 18 years you've been covering them, what stands out in particular from Quenton Nelson?
I mean, I've seen some good ones. McGlinchey, Stanley, the Martin brothers. You go back to Ryan Harris a little bit. That was sort of when I started covering them. I mean, genetically, he is quite unique in terms of how wide he is. I mean, usually when a guy is built like a square, it means that they're like 5'10". And he's 6'3", 6'4", and still squarish. Anyone who watched him with the Colts last year figured this out pretty quickly. So the guys are just not built like that, even at the NFL level. So that's part of it. But then he's just an animal. And he came along at the right time at Notre Dame because it was sort of when like Twitter and offensive line clips were easy to post and cut up, and people could sort of look at that and be like, holy crap, this guy's absolutely destroying people away from the play. Because what do? We all watch the ball pretty much. And so then when you go back and watch the film of the game, you start to get away from that, and you start watching some of the offensive line play and what's happening there. It's interesting for a guy who is sort of not social at all. Social media has really done a good job in terms of building his profile, because it just made it easier to see, like, wow, this guy, he loves destroying people. It doesn't just destroy him, he takes pleasure in it. And that's rare, I think, even for high-end prospects to really enjoy just kicking the crap out of people.
Yeah, and I remember last year when he was talking, I think when he first got introduced, he's like, I want to take away people's will to play the game, which is pretty intense coming from any player. But one thing that I noticed last year with Nelson is just how good of a teammate he was, where you saw at the end of plays, Nelson would be the first one down there to pick up his guy. It seemed like about every play you'd see that. You just see number 56 running down, picking up T.Y. Hilton, picking up one of the running backs. What does that speak, and what kind of teammate was he at Notre Dame?
Similar. I mean, I think that he was really close with Mike McGlinchey, but also Sam Mustipher and Alex Bars, two guys that are coming out this year from Notre Dame's offensive line group. I think being at Notre Dame was important to him, and I mean, it's not like coming back for his senior year was automatic. He could have come out and probably been a late first-round pick a year earlier or an early second-round pick, but he enjoyed being at Notre Dame, sort of being on a college team. The camaraderie that came with that. He loved Harry Hiestand as offensive line coaches with the Bears now. So, I mean, there's a ton that I think translated from Notre Dame to the NFL. And, I think in college it's sort of easy to be a good teammate when you're a great player and you enjoy what you're doing and you're winning a lot of games. In the NFL it's probably a little bit harder when the Colts got off to an uneven start and then sort of turned it on. I think he's somebody that if you were playing with him, you would want to try to meet that level. When he's running down and picking up the running back, or just destroying people who get a little too close to Andrew Luck, I would think that would resonate with guys, especially other offensive linemen, tight end, running backs. That those guys who are close to him physically on the field.
Right, definitely, and kind of looking at like the transformation of the Colts offensive line. I mean, from 2017 to 2018, going from their quarterback being the most sacked in the league to the least sacked in the league, or one of the least sacked in the league. I'm curious, does a player like Nelson, does he bring kind of that set the tone mentality, like we're going to run the ball, we're going to protect our quarterback, and we're going to dominate you? And second, how much credit do you give Nelson for the Colts offensive line turnaround in 2018?
Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be a reason, but I mean, no offensive line was built for with one great player and a bunch of scrubs, right? I mean, you have to have 5 really good players. The Colts happen to have probably 4 good players and a great player, I'm guessing. At Notre Dame, they had 2 top 10 picks in Nelson and McGlinchey. I think for their centers, probably a mid-round pick to a late-round pick. Alex Bars is probably a 3rd-round pick if he doesn't blow out his knee at the end of September. So, I mean, he played with really good players at Notre Dame is sort of my point. But I don't think that he would tell you, and I think he'd be right, it's his attitude might have a lot to do with the Colts, rising up the rankings of sacks allowed, but I think that it certainly goes well beyond his physical ability is the reason you would go from worst to first in terms of sacks allowed. But, the attitude can't do anything but help, but certainly it takes some real physical ability at some point, too.
Yeah. Talk to me about his personality a little bit. We know that you talked about Quenton Nelson's kind of a private guy, but then, with the rise of social media, you probably saw the whole dub thing that the Colts did where he was destroying a guy and yelling. What does that mean to Nelson, going along with his personality? It's how does Nelson handle that? Well, what is in his mindset? What does he want to do? I guess getting to know Nelson a little bit, a guy that's covered him for years. What kind of personality is Nelson?
The social media aspect of it in terms of the Colts putting out that video, I don't think he cares. Nor do I think there was a play in the Georgia game from the 2017 season where it was on all of his draft profiles that he picks up this blitz from the opposite side of the field, comes from left guard, basically from his gap, the B gap on the left side, all the way to the C gap, I think, to pick up a blitzing safety. It just absolutely depletes him. And that sort of went viral, and everyone on the Notre Dame team is retweeting it, and everyone's talking about it. It's on SportsCenter, all that kind of stuff. The play was an incomplete pass. It was not, it's not some great play that really impacted the game for Notre Dame. But I think that everyone seems to enjoy that stuff. Quenton Nelson enjoys doing it. He doesn't really enjoy talking about it. I remember after the Citrus Bowl, he took Devin White, who's probably going to be a first-round pick, Butkus Award winner out of LSU, that linebacker, and drove him straight out of the end zone on a 2-point conversion. It was the classic take your will away from you play. And I asked him about it after the game, and I was like, so did you also choke slam a guy? And he's like, he just kind of chuckled and was like, yeah, that felt pretty good. And that was it. That was the whole answer. He does not like doing media or interviews. I've bumped into him at some events or around, and he's a guy to sort of just talk to and spend 5 minutes with, just sort of how are you doing? How's the family? What's going on? That kind of stuff. But I think as soon as the recorder comes on, he just sort of turns into a different person. Doing media is just not his thing. So I think that the Colts beat media is probably getting the same experience that we got at Notre Dame. I just said Notre Dame when he got there, I think he was so nervous about it the first time. You couldn't tell if he was nervous or just didn't want to do it, and it turns out it was both. Now, within the NFL, I don't think he's nervous doing media anymore. He just doesn't really like doing it. So,
yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know how much you watched of Nelson's tape, I guess, this rookie year, but Nelson's a very, he always thinks he can improve. And so I'm curious, what did you see from Nelson's game in his rookie year? Had a great year, historic year. What did you see in Nelson's game that maybe he could continue to get better at coming into 2019 and then, continuing on into his NFL career?
Yeah, I only sort of consumed the Colts through probably Twitter video of Nelson destroying people, so it's hard to sit here and say if he was better pulling to his right, this would be a jump up, because he was already a Pro Bowl player as a rookie, and let's be honest, if he stays healthy, he'll be a Hall of Fame player. And having covered Zach Martin, who is as perfect technically as any offensive lineman I've covered here in almost 20 years, I I think even Quenton Nelson will tell you that. Like, from a technical standpoint, Zach Martin is a better player than he is. However, from a physical standpoint, Quenton Nelson has some stuff that is just like comes around once every 10, 15 years. So I think Quenton Nelson is in a good spot because he knows there's somebody out there who's better than him technically. And it's not just that he knows that this person exists, he actually knows him, he's friends with him, and Zach Martin. So I think that it's just sort of like watching what Martin is doing in Dallas and how his career is progressing, I think is a really good template for Nelson. I am not smart enough to tell you what all those things are in terms of the X's and O's, but if you have a Zach Martin as a role model and you can call on Harry Hiestand, who's with the Bears now, just in terms of, hey, can you check in, like, what do you think about this? Like, because Hiestand is an interesting guy where obviously the Bears are his employer, but he is very loyal to his guys, where he was actually giving Mike McGlinchey coaching pointers during the Bears 49ers game last year.
Wow.
So Nelson has a lot of resources to go to, and it's really important to him. He knows that his rookie year is not the best he's going to be, and he knows where he can get better. But in terms of me sitting here and saying, like, the technical stuff he needs to get better at, I'm not really sure. I just know that he's a workaholic and he'll get done whatever he puts his mind to.
Most definitely. Another player I wanted to talk about, who's also on the Colts. He actually just got tendered last week, I believe, is Matthias Farley. He's been with the Colts for, I believe, 2-3 years now. What kind of player was Farley like at Notre Dame? Because he came in as the Colts on the Colts roster as an undrafted free agent, and nobody really knew who he was. And then he had a pretty good season in 2017, and unfortunately, 2018 he was on injured reserve. But what kind of player was Farley like at Notre Dame?
You know, it's interesting. You go back to his high school career. He was kind of like a soccer player who then tried to play football. Was athletic enough to get looks from a place like Notre Dame. But I mean, he wasn't a national recruit. This was your classic 3-star developmental type player. He actually enrolled as a wide receiver and redshirted, and then they moved him to defensive back. And then he started on the team that lost to Alabama in the national championship game due to somebody else getting injured. And then played a bunch, pretty much just played all the time from there, but was never somebody, I think, that blew you away physically. Mentally, he is an incredibly sharp guy, very much into the playbook, diligent worker, all the stuff that I think in the NFL is probably a little bit underrated when we're talking about guys and how they project. He's just not somebody you're ever going to have to worry about if you're a head coach or a defensive coordinator or a defensive backs coach. It was just more the athleticism. Was he going to be good enough to hang at the NFL level? And honestly, I thought probably not. And I think the NFL felt the same way, which is why he was undrafted. So I think his career, the fact that he's had an NFL career is really impressive to me because he's not somebody who's going to blow you away in a 40 or a vertical jump. He's sort of going to be one of those guys that I think the team that he's on is going to try to draft over him probably every year, but is going to have a hard time doing that just because he's such a reliable sort of, third safety, special teams guy. Is he somebody that you would want starting on a Super Bowl contender? I don't know about that, but he's certainly somebody that I want on my 53-man roster.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious. He can obviously play safety. What other things can Farley do for a team? He's probably a very versatile player. Mentioned he played receiver, played defensive back. What else can he provide to an NFL team like the Colts?
I mean, I think that sort of that reserve safety on every special teams unit is a good place for him to be. And then he's like a no-maintenance player. He's not somebody you have to tell something to do twice. He's an easy guy to have out sort of in your community. I know, following him on Twitter, it sounds like I see him tweeting about some of the stuff he's doing in the community around Indianapolis, with other Colts players. He's somebody that I would absolutely want him interacting with the community and schools and all that stuff. I mean, it's just like, he's a good guy. He's a good program guy in college. He's a good franchise guy in the NFL that you would want to be associated with whatever you're running. And then he's going to be somebody that could be on all your special teams unit and help you out in the defensive backfield for for 5-6 years at least, and somebody you just don't have to worry about.
Yeah, and Colts GM Chris Ballard, he talked about how much he loves Farley and loves everything that he stands for. So my question to you, Pete, is what can a guy like Farley bring in terms of a locker room? What can he bring to a locker room like the Colts that's very, very valuable for a player like him?
Yeah, I think it goes beyond like the no maintenance attitude. I think if you have a younger guy, like let's say the Colts draft Deontay Thompson from Alabama, or another one of the top safeties that are out there. Farley is not. I don't think Farley's going to be one of those guys who just sort of like, hey, you're here to take my job. I'm not going to help you do that. I think he's still like, okay, if this helps us win and make the playoffs, then I'll do whatever it takes to help this guy get up to speed. So I mean, that's very helpful. I think he's an easy guy to talk to, whether you're a defensive back or an offensive lineman or a wide receiver, or quarterback. I don't think it really matters. So, in terms of being a locker room guy, I think it's in the same way he's no maintenance with your coaches and your GMs. I also think he's like a really good sort of cohesive personality in the locker room too. Smart, bright, intellectual guy, into a lot of different stuff. And then it's. Again, it sort of goes back to what I said earlier. If I was a GM, he's somebody that I would want on my 53-man roster. Yeah,
absolutely. One more question for you, Pete. I know you're a very busy guy. So some Notre Dame Fighting Irish players are going to enter the draft, and you already mentioned a few of those players. Who are some of the players that you think could potentially be picks or on the radar of the Colts in the draft?
Well, I guess I'm not too familiar with what the Colts' needs are, but I think the highest rated guy coming out of Notre Dame will be Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle, who's kind of uniquely built for that position. He's not a nose guard, even though he played a little bit of in college. He's a 6'6" guy who's sort of skinny at 310 pounds, very athletic, very flexible. Sort of your interior pass rushing defensive lineman, and look, he went against Quenton Nelson every day in practice for a couple of years, so that is, I think, sort of helped sharpen his attitude a little bit. So I mean, that's the highest rated guy. I think that among the other draft picks, Drew Tranquil is an Indiana guy out of Fort Wayne, who was a two-time captain, played 3 positions here. Probably similar to Farley in some ways, where he's going to be every group of special teams. Maybe more of a backup linebacker than a starter out of the gate. But, again, somebody you'd want on your 53-man roster. And, I think the other guys that are interesting, Miles Boykin, the receiver, had a great combine. He's a Chicago kid. I don't know if he'll ever be a true, number 1 wide receiver. I think being a sort of a number 2 is the top for him. Then Dexter Williams, maybe more of your third running back coming out of Notre Dame. And then Alex Bars is if the Colts want to go from strength to strength, I think Alex Bars would really be a valuable pick for anybody, because he's sort of a late second, early third round talent that you're probably going to be able to get in the 4th or the 5th round just because of his knee injury in September. He was really playing the best of any Notre Dame player offensively or defensively last year when he got hurt. Then Julian Love is maybe one of the last guys that's really worth mentioning. The cornerback, Thorpe Award finalist, set the school record for PBUs in a career and in a season. Just, I think, again, a no-maintenance player, athletically not going to blow you away, but in terms of somebody who's really reliable, I think he'd be an easy guy to slot into any secondary anywhere, and it could help you as a nickel back as well.
Absolutely. We'll have to see. Pete, who the Colts select in the draft. Is coming up very, very soon. Hey, I appreciate your time, man. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk a little bit about Notre Dame and about the Colts.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. We'll have to do it again soon. Again, that was Pete Sampson of The Athletic. He covers Notre Dame athletics for The Athletic. You have to check his work out. He has some great stuff on there. Hey, this is Cody Felger. Thanks for listening to my podcast. I would love it if you liked and subscribed, and also if you left a comment. Let me know what you think. You guys can also find me on social media. You can just find me on Facebook just by typing my name, Cody, last name Felger, or you can find me on Twitter at CPFelger55. So be sure to check me out there. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate the support. It really means a lot coming from you guys. So, yeah, I hope to keep up these great videos. Thanks for listening.